What's up, guys? This is Black Park here, and today we are going to predict. We're going to do something new. We are going to be predicting. I am going to be predicting the NFL predictions for the NFL 2025 NFL season. So we're going to start off with the AFC East, and we're going to start off with the Buffalo Bills. So they kickstart off at home against the Baltimore Ravens. That's a win. I say that's a win. And then here, this game against the New York Jets. I say that's a loss, but they get the win over their division rival Miami Dolphins at home. They beat the New Orleans Saints, in my prediction. At home against the New England Patriots, they win that one. Now, this game against the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta, I could see this going either way. But the Falcons, they recently do have a problem. So you know what? They're having trouble. They did collapse after they had a 6-3 record to kick off the 2024 NFL season before they lost 4 straight and ended up missing the playoffs altogether. So you know what? Give me the Bills in that one. And heading into the bye week, they come off at Carolina. I have the Bills winning that one. I also have the Bills beating the Kansas City Chiefs in Buffalo. Week 10 against the Miami Dolphins. At Miami. You know what? I could be proven wrong, but you know what? Give me the Dolphins in that one. Week 11 versus Tampa Bay. I think they get it done. They will lose to the Houston Texans, but beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then this Week 14 game against the Cincinnati Bengals, I have the Bengals winning that one. But a win in Foxborough against New England. They beat Cleveland. They will beat the Browns. This game right here against the defending Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. I have a feeling the Eagles are going to be real good this season. This season too. But you know what? I'll give it to the Bills, and they will finish off with a win against the New York Jets. So I have the Bills finishing 13-4 this season. Okay, we are now moving on to the Miami Dolphins schedule. And they start things off at the Indianapolis Colts. But you know what? Indy hasn't really won a season opener in over a decade. But you know what? I feel like this year they will end that streak. So I'm going to say that's a loss in that one. But they beat the New England Patriots in week 2. This one at Buffalo, not a chance. I have a feeling they are going to lose. And then we're home against the New York Jets. I say they get it done. I also think they will beat the Carolina Panthers in week 5. But week 6 against the Los Angeles Chargers, I'm going to say that's a loss. I mean, at Cleveland in Week 7. They did it. They beat Cleveland at Cleveland last season. But you know what? I don't see this stretch right here. This two games on the road that I could see, plus at home against the Baltimore Ravens. I'll give it to Miami Week 7, but they will lose. My prediction is they will lose to Atlanta in Week 8 at Atlanta. They also will lose to Baltimore in Week 9, but they get a win Week 10 against the Buffalo Bills. Week 11 against the Washington Commanders, I have the Dolphins losing that one. Then they go on to the bye week. They come off the bye week, win over New Orleans Saints, but lose to the Jets. They lose to the Steelers. But you know what? Win over the Cincinnati Bengals. And a win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers before closing it out with a loss to the New England Patriots. So that's an 8-9 record for the Miami Dolphins this season. My prediction. All right. New England Patriots. Okay, coming in Week 1 against the Las Vegas Raiders, I'm gonna say a loss to them, a loss to Miami, but then Pittsburgh coming to town, I'll give it to New England before they lose, shockingly, in my opinion, lose to the Carolina Panthers. At Buffalo, against a Bills team. Okay, at Buffalo, though, the game at Buffalo, I feel they're gonna lose that one. But they get the New Orleans Saints at New Orleans. I sense an upset coming here. But in Week 7 against the Tennessee Titans, they win that one. I feel they will win that one. They'll beat the Cleveland Browns in Week 8. They'll also beat the Atlanta Falcons in Week 9. But then against Tampa Bay, I think they're going to lose that one. But they get a win against the New York Jets. At Cincinnati Bengals, this game right here, I call it possibly it could come back with a bang. I'm feeling they're going to lose that one, but they beat the New York Giants before going on the bye week. Before coming off a bye week, they get swept by the Buffalo Bills, and then they lose to the Baltimore Ravens. But you know what? At the New York Jets here, I don't think it's happening. They're going to lose, but they win in the finale against the Miami Dolphins. So I predict a 7-10 record for the Patriots. Okay, now we move on to our final one in the AFC East, the New York Jets. I have them starting with 2-0, beating both Pittsburgh and Buffalo at home, but they lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Lose on the road, as well as to the Miami Dolphins. But you know what? Get a win against the Dallas Cowboys. They will lose to the Denver Broncos, and they will also lose to the Carolina Panthers. At Cincinnati, I don't see it happening. And go on the bye week, come back off, get a win over Cleveland. And then at the New England Patriots, I have them losing that one. At Baltimore, they're going to lose, but they win against the Atlanta Falcons. They will get a win against the New York Jets, lose to Jacksonville, beat the Saints. They'll beat the Patriots before losing at Buffalo to the Buffalo Bills. And that's for the AFC East. And the Jets finished with an 8-9 record. Okay, AFC North. We start off with the Baltimore Ravens. So coming on week 1 at Buffalo, I say that's a loss. But they'll beat the Cleveland Browns in week 2 in Baltimore. They'll beat Detroit. But in week 4 at Arrowhead Stadium against the Kansas City Chiefs, I think they're going to lose that one. They'll win week 5 against the Houston Texans, beat the Los Angeles Rams. They'll beat the Chicago Bears, they'll beat the Miami Dolphins, and the Minnesota Vikings before losing in Cleveland to the Browns. I have a feeling they're going to beat the Jets. They're going to beat the New York Jets. They'll beat the Cincinnati Bengals and the Pittsburgh Steelers at home, but lose to the Bengals on the road. And then I have them at home against the New England Patriots. That's a win. And the winner at Green Bay before losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road. So I predict a 12-5 record for the Ravens. All right, Cincinnati Bengals. I say this stretch right here should be pretty manageable. I say they win all 3 of them. But they lose at Denver to the Broncos. You know what? They'll get a win over Detroit, but they'll lose to Green Bay. And then week 7 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think they'll get it done. They'll beat the New York Jets in week 8. Against the Chicago Bears, I think they'll get it done. But they'll lose at Pittsburgh to the Steelers. And then week 12 against the New England Patriots, I have as a win. At Baltimore, they're obviously going to lose. And then week 14 at the Buffalo Bills, I say it's a win there. And they'll win in week 15 against the Baltimore Ravens. But coming into Miami, I'm going to say that's a loss, but they'll finish off the season with wins over the Arizona Cardinals and the Cleveland Browns, so they'll finish with a 12-5 record as well. All right, time to move on to the Cleveland Browns. Okay, there we go. All right, time to move on to the Cleveland Browns schedule. Now at home, Cincinnati Bengals. On the road, at home, that's going to be a loss. On the road against the Baltimore Ravens, that's a loss. But they'll somehow, some way, take care of business against the Green Bay Packers. But it doesn't get easier for them. They got to go to Detroit, home at Minnesota, and then face Pittsburgh on the road. You know what? Loss. All of them are losses. And you know what? It doesn't get any better. 2 more games coming up a bye week. They are there. So basically 1-7 coming on a bye, coming into the bye week. And you know what? It still doesn't get any better here. Another loss for the Browns, but they beat the Baltimore Ravens. They then shockingly beat the Baltimore Ravens at home. But for Bell, that's a loss to the Raiders. Loss. Damn, they hosting the San Francisco 49ers. I'm gonna say that's a loss. And you know what? It's a loss to the Titans as well. Now coming into Chicago, I say they'll upset the Bears, but lose to the Bills in Week 16 before they'll beat the Steelers, but then lose to the Bengals. So, yeah, 4-13 record, my prediction for the Browns. Alright, do I predict the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to suffer their first losing season since 2003, something like that? Well, they're not going to start off. I don't think they're going to start off good. They're going to lose to the New York Jets. Then at home against the Seattle Seahawks. You know what? I'm going to say win at home against the Seahawks, but they lose to the Patriots. I don't see Week 4 against the Minnesota Vikings. I'll say, you know what? Because it's at home, I'll give it to the Steelers. Because you know what? They'll beat the Cleveland Browns in Week 6, but it doesn't get any better. But it won't get any better for the Steelers. Look at this. Week 7 at Cincinnati. That's definitely a loss for them. Loss. And I think I take it back. They'll beat the Colts, but they're gonna lose to the Chargers. I don't see that winning. But then let's see. Then you know what? Win the Cincinnati Bengals, but lose to the Chicago Bears, which they'll lose to the Chicago Bears. And you know what? This stretch right here, Bills Ravens. Really doesn't get any. You know what? Not happening. They're going to lose to the Bills. They're also going to lose at Baltimore. And is the Dolphins going to be the one? Do I think the Dolphins are going to be the one to end it? No. They're not going to be the one to end. I don't think they will be the one to end the Steelers streak. But you know what? Detroit is going to be, I think. So I predict a 7-10 record for the Steelers. So my prediction is they're going to have their first losing season in over 20 years. So that's for the AFC North. Okay, this is the AFC South. Houston Texans. Alright. So I have a feeling they're going to take a loss to the Los Angeles Rams, but they beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Going to Jacksonville, I'm going to say that's a loss. But they beat the Titans. But we got a tough couple of games here. I have a feeling they lose to Baltimore. They lose to Seattle, but they take a win at home against the San Francisco 49ers. And then against Denver Broncos, I have a feeling this game could be something. They lose that game, split the season series against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then this game here against the Titans, yeah, I have them losing to the Titans. And then against the Buffalo Bills, I have them winning that game. And then at Indianapolis. Yeah, I think they're losing that one. They're losing to the Kansas City Chiefs. They'll beat the Arizona Cardinals. They'll beat the Las Vegas Raiders. But you know what? Lost to the Chargers, but they closed out the season with a win over the Indianapolis Colts. So I predict an 8-9 season for the Houston Texans. The Indianapolis Colts, my goodness, a shocking team that honestly should have been in the playoffs a couple years ago, but they couldn't get the job done. Let's see how they do this season. Okay, so I have a feeling they're going to end their Week 1 skid by beating the Miami Dolphins, but lose to the Denver Broncos. They'll also lose to the Titans, and you know what, to the LA Rams as well. But you know what? Pick up a couple wins here, beat the Raiders, beat the Cardinals, and you know what? Beat the Chargers. And they also take care of business. They'll beat the Titans and the Steelers, but then this game at Atlanta, at home against Atlanta, I should say. Actually, I have them actually losing to the Steelers. I actually do have them losing to the Steelers because this is at Pittsburgh. But you know what? They come back. They beat the Falcons. At Kansas City Chiefs. The Colts did pull off an upset over the Chiefs in the 2019 and 2022 seasons. But you know what? This time, I don't think it's going to happen. Yeah, I don't think it's happening this time. They are going to lose to the Chiefs. But they'll beat the Texans. Lose on the road against the Jaguars. They'll lose to the Seahawks, but give me a win. But unfortunately, I have a Colts finishing with a 9-8 record. Because they lose to the Texans as well on the road. Alright, Jacksonville Jaguars has a pretty tough schedule, pretty manageable schedule. I have a feeling they beat the Carolina Panthers, but they lose to the Cincinnati Bengals. They'll beat the Texans, but lose to the Niners. Yeah. Okay. But this one right here, I think they're going to lose that. But you know what? They'll beat the Seahawks. They'll beat the Rams. They're then coming off the bye week against the Las Vegas Raiders in Las Vegas. I feel like that's going to be a loss. They'll also lose to the Texans in Week 10. But then they beat the Los Angeles Chargers before losing to Arizona. They'll lose to the Titans, but then they'll beat the Colts in Week 14. I have them beating the Colts in Week 14. I have them beating the New York Jets in Week 15, but then losing to the Denver Broncos in Week 16, as well as to the Indianapolis Colts in Week 17. And then in Week 18, I have them beating the Titans. So, 8-9 record for the Jags. The Tennessee Titans, really not such a really good team as of late. And you know what? kind of not really going to look too good. I have them losing to the Denver Broncos and the Los Angeles Rams, but you know what? They'll be the Indianapolis Colts. But then in week 4 against the Houston Texans on the road, that's a loss. They're also going to lose to the Arizona Cardinals. And then at Las Vegas, yeah, I think that's going to be a loss. But then coming into week 7 against the New England Patriots, yeah, I have a feeling the Patriots are going to win that one. They're also going to lose. And I also have a feeling they're going to lose in Indianapolis to the Indianapolis Colts. But to get a win against the Los Angeles Chargers in week 9, going into the bye week, then I have a feeling they'll get a couple of wins here. They'll beat the Titans, they'll beat the Seahawks, and I think they'll beat the Jags in week 13. Wait a minute. Yeah, they'll beat the Jags in week 13. But then against Cleveland, what did I have for them? Had them as a win. And then at San Francisco, but this next couple games, this stretch right here is pretty tough, I would say. So you know what? I'm going to say they're going to lose to San Francisco, lose to Kansas City, find out some way to beat New Orleans, but lose to the Jags to finish off the season. So I have them as a 7-10 record for the Tennessee Titans. Okay, time to move it on to the Denver Broncos. Boy. This is the AFC West. Oh, boy. You know what? 2 easy wins. They'll beat the Titans. They'll beat the Colts. But then in LA against the Los Angeles Chargers, yeah, I'm taking as a loss there. But they'll beat the Cincinnati Bengals in week 4. Now, this game right here, Denver Broncos at the Philadelphia Eagles. Broncos a good team, no doubt. They were good. They proved me wrong the past couple of seasons. Although in the 2023 season, they struggled they struggled after surging, winning 5 straight. They won 5 straight, but then after that streak ended, they pretty much struggled the rest of the way, and they are missing the playoffs entirely. But they made the playoffs in the 2024 season last season. But if this game was in Denver, I could have seen the Broncos. I could have possibly seen the Broncos winning this one. But this game is in Philly. It's in Philadelphia. Yeah, no way. No way the Broncos. I would be shocked. I would honestly be shocked if the Broncos do pull it off against the Philadelphia Eagles. I would be really shocked if they do that. But you know what? Wins against both the Jets and the Giants. And you know what? Give me a win for the Broncos over the Cowboys. But then in week 9 against the Houston Texans, it's at Houston, but you know what? I'm gonna take the Broncos. But you know what? Week 10, they're at home here. I think they take both. Beat both Las Vegas and Kansas City. But then at Washington, I'm feeling that's going to be a loss. And what's the Broncos swept the Raiders last season in the 2024 NFL season. I have a feeling they're going to do it again this season. Against Green Bay, gonna say Green Bay could be a challenge. I'm feeling Green Bay is going to win that one, but they'll beat the Jags in Week 16. They will beat the Jags. Let me just double check. Okay, yeah, they'll beat the Jags, but they'll lose to the Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium, but then win in the final week against the Los Angeles Chargers. So I predict a 12-5 record for the Broncos. Impressive. I'll say if that happens, impressive. All right, Kansas City Chiefs. The team that lost in the Super Bowl last season to the Philadelphia Eagles. Start off the regular season against the Los Angeles Chargers in the Brazil game, with the Chargers being the home team. I see possibly crazy stuff going on in the NFL. So you know what? I think the Chiefs are going to lose Week 1 to the Los Angeles Chargers. And then this game, Week 2, against the Philadelphia Eagles. Personally, guys, I do not like the Chiefs. I don't like the Chiefs. I actually like the Eagles. I like the Eagles. As you could probably tell before, I'm a huge fan of the Philadelphia Eagles. But you know what? I don't like the Chiefs. I have a feeling they're going to potentially get some revenge in some way. So I'm going to say, I'm going to predict the Chiefs that one. And even though this game is at New York, the Giants, I don't really see them being part of the team. Yeah, I really don't see it happening. I think the Chiefs are going to pull it off. They'll beat Baltimore and Jacksonville. Against Detroit, I see it happening. I think they'll beat the Lions this time. They'll beat the Raiders. The Commanders with only one win against the Chiefs. That ain't ending this year. I could tell. I could see that not happening. And then coming into but then this is where it gets a little bit tricky for the Chiefs. I think they lose to the Buffalo Bills and to Denver. In Denver, they'll beat the Indianapolis. I think they'll beat the Indianapolis Colts in Week 12, but lose to Dallas. They'll, Week 14 against the Houston Texans. I think they'll win that one. But you know what? I'm gonna see them. I'll say a sweep for the Chargers against the Chiefs this season. But the Chiefs will beat the Tennessee Titans. They'll beat Denver in Denver before losing on the road against the Las Vegas Raiders. So I predict an 11-6 record for the Chiefs this season. If my predictions go well, it'll be the first time in 10 years that the Chiefs will not win the AFC West. All right, Las Vegas Raiders. A team that I think is going to really struggle this season. But you know what? They start with a win. I'll say they'll start with a win over the New England Patriots. And you know what? give them. They'll start 2-0. I'll give them to start 2-0 here. But this is where things could. This is where things will not could and a little bit trouble. These 3 games right here, they're gonna lose to Washington. They're losing at. I think they're gonna lose at Washington. They will lose to the Chicago Bears. You know what? Another loss to the Indianapolis Colts. But week 6, I think they'll win that one against the Tennessee Titans before losing on the road against the Kansas City Chiefs. They'll come off a bye week. They'll beat Jacksonville. They will lose to the Broncos. And in week 11, at home against the Dallas Cowboys, I'm going to take the Cowboys in that one. But in week 12, Cleveland Browns against the Cleveland Browns, I think they take it. I think they'll get the win. They'll lose to the LA Chargers in LA, as well as they're gonna lose to Denver. I think they're also gonna lose to Philadelphia. I think they'll lose to the Philadelphia Eagles in week 15, as well as to the Houston Texans in week 16. But you know what? 2 wins to finish off the season against the New York Giants and the Kansas City Chiefs. So for the Raiders, better. I predict them to do a little bit better this season, but not good. I don't think it's going to be playoff bound for them. It's a 7-10 record for the Raiders. Okay, time to do the Los Angeles Chargers. I see crazy stuff going on for the Chargers. I think they'll beat the Chiefs. Yeah, I think they're gonna actually pull it off against the Chiefs in week 1. But they'll lose to Las Vegas in week 2. I think they'll lose there. Week 3 against the Broncos. Give me the Chargers for that one. And the Chargers here in week 4 against the Giants. I'm actually going to say, you know what? I'm actually going to say they lose to the Giants and to the Commanders in week 5. I think they lose to both of them. I think they're going to lose to I think they somehow find a way to lose. They're going to lose to both of them. Yeah, I think they're going to lose to both the Giants and the Commanders. But in week 6 against the Miami Dolphins, I think I see it happening. Give me a win for the Chargers in week 6. But in week 7 against the Indianapolis Colts, yeah, not gonna happen. That's a loss. But they'll beat the Minnesota Vikings in week 8. And then at Tennessee Titans in week 9. I'm gonna say that's a loss, but in week 10 against the Steelers, I think I'm going with a win for them. Yeah, a win for the Los Angeles Chargers, I should say. Week 11 at Jacksonville. That's going to be a loss. And then they go to the bye week. They come out of a bye week they'll beat the Raiders. I don't see them losing that game. Week 14 against the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know why this game could go to this game. It's something that's gonna be crazy. You know what? I'll give it to them. The Chargers will in week 14 against the Eagles. I'll give it to them. I think they'll sweep the season series. I have them sweeping the season series against the Chiefs in Week 15. I think they'll pull it off in Dallas in Week 16. But then in Week 17, against the Houston Texans, they were in the rematch from the wild card round of last season's playoffs where the Texans won. This time, however, the Chargers are going to pull it off. And then in Week 8, but then they finish off the season at Denver. That's going to be a loss. So I got a 10-7 record for the Los Angeles Chargers. How things will turn out, we'll see in the regular season, which begins on Thursday with Dallas Cowboys visiting the Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, the defending Super Bowl champions, that is. Alright. We're moving on to the NFC East in our next part. In the next time. Alrighty. Dallas Cowboys for the NFC East now. I'm going to say Week 1 at the defending champions, Philadelphia Eagles. Nope, I don't see it. I could see the Eagles winning that one because it's at home. But the Cowboys will take care of business here. I think they'll beat the Giants. I think they'll beat the Bears. But they'll lose to the Green Bay Packers. As well as I think they're going to lose to the New York Jets. But you know what? Give me wins against the Carolina Panthers and the Washington Commanders before losing to the Denver Broncos in Week 8. They face the Arizona Cardinals in Week 9. I could see them getting it. I think I could see them. I actually could see them losing that. Yeah, I could see them winning that game. I have a feeling they might win that game. At Las Vegas, give me the Cowboys. Versus Philadelphia at home. Yeah, I'm gonna say a win for them. But they'll beat the Chiefs. But then this is where things could get interesting. I think they lose to the Lions. They'll beat the Vikings. But then I think they close out the season with losses to the Los Angeles Chargers and Washington before finishing off the season with a win over the New York Giants. So I predict it may not be. I flip the schedule. I think the Cowboys could do it. Could make the playoffs. I predict a 10-7 record for them. The New York Giants are a team that I really don't think is going to do well at all. So, I think they're going to start off with 3 losses. 3 straight losses. They're going to lose to the Commanders, lose to the Cowboys, and then lose to the Chiefs. But Week 4 against the Los Angeles Chargers, give me a win. But they'll lose to the New Orleans Saints in Week 5. I have them losing that game. I have them losing to the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, I have them losing all of them games. But then at home against the San Francisco 49ers, you know what? I feel confident. Give me a win there. But they'll lose to the Chicago Bears in Chicago, as well as to the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions. Coming off a bye week, they're going to lose to the Patriots. But you know what? Give me a win over the Washington Commanders in Week 15 for the Giants. But guess what? I have them losing to Minnesota, Las Vegas, and Dallas. 3-14 record, I predict, for the Giants. And now we move on to the defending Super Bowl champions, Philadelphia Eagles. How do I think they're going to do this season? Well, let's take a look at this. This is their schedule. They got the Cowboys in Week 1. Give me a win. But they'll lose to the Chiefs in Week 2. I have a feeling they're going to lose to the Chiefs in Week 2 this time. But you know what? Win, win. I think they beat the Rams, they beat the Bucs, they beat the Broncos. Give me a win over the Giants. But I could see Minnesota taking it in week 7 because it's in Minnesota. So I think they're going to lose that. But they'll sweep the season series against the Giants. And even though this game's in Green Bay, I'm feeling it's going to be the Eagles taking that one. They'll beat Detroit. I feel they'll beat Detroit in week 11 before losing to the Cowboys. They'll beat the Chargers. I think they'll beat the Chargers. I think they'll lose to the. I think they beat the Bears, but lose to the Chargers. My mistake. They'll beat the Raiders. I think they'll beat the Raiders. And you know what? I think it's going to be win over the Commanders, lose to the Bills, win over the Commanders. I think they sweep the Commanders this season. So I predict a 12 by. Well, actually, you know what? I think they'll lose at Washington. So I lose Buffalo, beat Washington at home. So I think it's a 11-6 record for the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, the Washington Commanders. The schedule for this season. Give me a win to start off the season for them, but it could get crazy for the Commanders as I have them losing to the Green Bay Packers. But you know what? Week 3 and 4. You know what? Give me a win against Las Vegas before but they lose to the Atlanta Falcons in week 4 at the LA Chargers. A game that I could see possibly seeing going either way. But you know what? I think the Commanders get that one. Get them. But they lose. But in the game that they made a miracle to win against the Bears last season, I think this time the Bears are going to get their revenge. And I think they lose at Dallas. Against the Chiefs? No way. I don't see that. They only have one win against the Chiefs. That ain't going to happen. They'll beat Seattle in I think they'll beat Seattle in week 9. But I have a feeling they're gonna lose to the Lions in week 10. It's gonna be. I think the Lions are gonna want their revenge in that game, and I think that's probably what's gonna happen. But you know what? Wins over the Dolphins and the Broncos between the bye week. They'll lose to the Vikings, but you know what? But they'll lose to the Giants here. But I think they'll beat the Eagles in week 16. In week 16, they'll beat the Cowboys, but then they're going to lose. I think they lose to the Eagles in week 18. So, 8-9 record for the Commanders. Okay, time to move on to the NFC North where we got the Chicago Bears. I think they'll start off with a win at home against the Minnesota Vikings. I have a feeling they're actually going to lose these two. I think they'll win. I have a feeling they'll win there, but lose at Detroit. They'll lose to Dallas. But then you know what? Give me a win over the Las Vegas Raiders in week 4. And then go into the bye week. They come out of the bye week. Give me 2 wins there against the Washington Commanders at Washington and then against the New Orleans Saints in week 7. But this is where I don't see it. These two. Well, those two against Baltimore and Cincinnati. Yeah, nope. No way. Yeah, I see them losing both games. But they'll beat the Giants in week 10, lose to the Vikings. I think they're going to lose to the Vikings in week 11. But they'll beat the Steelers in week 12 before losing to the Eagles in week 13. And then we got 2 games against the Bears got 2 games against the Green Bay Packers between week 14 and 16. In addition to a game with the Cleveland Browns. Yeah, I'm thinking they're going to lose. I feel like they might lose. I have a feeling they're going to lose all of them, in my opinion. At San Francisco, I think they lose that, but they'll close out the season with a win over the Detroit Lions at home. So I have a 7-10 record for the Chicago Bears. Okay, how do I think the Detroit Lions are gonna do this season, and could they possibly, and well, if I how they make the Super Bowl this season for the first time? Well, bad news for you. Bad news for them. I think they're gonna lose Week 1 at Green Bay this time. I have a feeling this time it's gonna be a loss for the Lions. They won at Green Bay past 3 seasons, or past few seasons, but I think that's going to be a loss. But they'll beat the Bears at home. Yeah, after the Baltimore Ravens, I see them losing that. They'll beat the Browns, but lose. But then they'll lose to the Cincinnati Bengals. And then at the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead Stadium, do I think they're going to beat them again? No, they're going to lose that one. But you know what? Give me a win for the Lions over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Give me a win here, win there, but they'll lose in Week 11 to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles, the defending Super Bowl champions for the season, we really don't see the Lions pulling that one off, but they'll win against the New York Giants. They'll beat the New York Giants. And you know what? Give me a win here against the Green Bay Packers in Week 13, and give me a win over the Dallas Cowboys in Week 14. But they'll lose to the LA Rams in Week 15. They'll beat the Steelers in Week 16. But then, yeah, I think it's going to be a loss for the Lions. Both Vikings and Bears. So I haven't finishing with a 9-8 record this season. Will be enough to win the NFC North. We'll find out. All right, Green Bay Packers. How do I think they're going to do this season? Well, I say they kickstart off with a bang. I think they're going to start off this season with a bang. I think they beat the Lions, beat the Commanders, and I also think they beat the Browns in Week 3. So they're 3-0. They're 3-0. I think they're going to start 3-0. You know what? Undefeated heading into the bye week. But then Week 6 against the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 6. What? Give me a win there. And give me a win. Give me a win there. I think they win that one. And then at the Arizona Cardinals, give me a win. Week 8, pick at Pittsburgh, give me a win there. But what? Give me a win against the Carolina Panthers in Week 9 before the Philadelphia Eagles. But then Philadelphia Eagles come down to face the Packers. I think that's going to be where they are going to lose. I think the Eagles will pull it off in Green Bay against the Packers in Week 10. But I get a win over the New York Giants in Week 11. They'll beat the Minnesota Vikings in Week 12. I have them losing to the Detroit Lions in Week 13. But you know what? Win. But then coming up to base two games that I could see the Packers potentially be at home against Baltimore and then at Minnesota. These two games that I could see potentially, I think they lose both of them. So Packers finish with a 13-4 record for me. The Minnesota Vikings, coming off of a playoff berth and a loss in the wild card round to the Los Angeles Rams. Things could have been a bit crazy here, but I think they lose to the Chicago Bears in Chicago before getting a win over the Falcons in week 2. I think they lose to the Cincinnati Bengals in week 3. And I also think they lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 4. But you know what? Give me a win here in week 5. Going into a bye week. Coming off a bye week, they face the Philadelphia Eagles. Give me a win. I think they'll. I have a feeling I'm feeling confident. I feel like they could do it. They could potentially upset the Eagles, but they'll lose to the Chargers in week 8, as well as to the Lions in week 9. And then week 10 against the Baltimore Ravens. I think they're gonna lose that game, but I think they'll beat the Bears in week 11. But going into Green Bay, yeah, I have them losing that game to the Packers, and I also have them losing to the Seattle Seahawks in week 13. But they get a win over the Commanders in week 14. They lose. I think they lose to the Dallas Cowboys in week 15. Let me just make sure that yeah, okay. And I think they beat the Giants in week 16. And then you know what? Give me they 3 wins to finish off the season. I predict an 8-9 record for the Minnesota Vikings. Alright, time to move on to the NFC South, where I think this is going to be something here for the Falcons after that season. But you know what? I think they pulled off against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 1 before falling to Minnesota and Carolina in back-to-back weeks before getting a win, surprisingly, over the Washington Commanders. Then they go into their bye week. They come out of a bye week. Oh boy, tough one. They gotta play the Buffalo Bills. I'm taking a loss there, and I'm also taking a loss for them against the San Francisco 49ers. But they'll beat the Miami Dolphins in week 8. I think they'll beat the Miami Dolphins week 8. But they're going to lose to the New England Patriots. I don't think they beat the New England Patriots in week 9. Week 10 at the Indianapolis Colts. I think that's a loss. But they'll beat the Carolina Panthers at home in week 11. And then at the New Orleans Saints, I'm going to say the Saints win that one. But then they face the New York Jets. That's another loss. I think that's going to be a loss. But then they get a win against the Seattle Seahawks before I think they'll something. I think they're going to lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But you know what? Give me a win at Arizona for the Falcons. It's lose to the Rams and finish off the season, but win over the New Orleans Saints. Falcons I think they finished with a 7-10 record this season. Carolina Panthers, I think they really got some work that needs to take care of. So I think they're going to lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they're going to lose to all of these 4. but they'll beat the New England Patriots in Week 4. I think they could do it there. However, I think they're going to lose to the Miami Dolphins and the Dallas Cowboys in back-to-back weeks. Week 7 against the New York Jets. You know what? Give me the Panthers there. But then Week 8, tough one against the Buffalo Bills. That's a tough one. That's going to be a loss. They're also going to lose to the Green Bay Packers. But you know what? Give me a win over the New Orleans Saints. But a loss to the Falcons and to the Niners. But you know what? I'm confident. I feel like it could happen. Give me a win for the Panthers over the Los Angeles Rams. But then at New Orleans, Saints here. You know what? I see it happening. Give me a win there. But then in Tampa Bay, give me a win. Win here. Then they lose to finish off the season against the Bucks. So I give them a 7-10 record for the Carolina Panthers. Alrighty, the New Orleans Saints. I have a feeling this is going to be a tough season for them. You know what? I say they start off a season with 4 straight losses. But then facing the New York Giants, I feel like they could pull it off against the New York Giants. So give me a win there. Give me a win there. You know what? Give me a win over the New England Patriots as well. Well, but you guys will lose to the Chicago Bears. You lose to the Bucks. You lose to the Rams. You lose to the Panthers. And then Week 12 against the Atlanta Falcons in Week 12. Well, I say give me a win there. But then going to Miami to face the Dolphins in Week 13. I have them losing that game, and they get swept by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then, as well as and I think they also lose to the Carolina Panthers. You know what? Yeah, I see a 3-14 record for the New Orleans Saints. I really don't see them being contenders this season at all. Alright, now we have Tampa Bay Buccaneers for the way they're going to start off. But you know what? I think they're going to start off with a loss this season. You know what? I think they actually start off with back-to-back losses. Give me losses to the Falcons and the Texans. But you know what? They get a win over the New York Jets before losing to the Philadelphia Eagles in Week 4. But you know what? I see it here. But they're going to lose to the Seahawks. But you know what? Give me a win over the Lions the 49ers before losing to the Lions in Detroit. I think they'll beat the Saints. And you know what? In Week 8. And you know what? Week 9, or should I say Week 10, after coming off a bye, they go to a bye week, then come off of it. I think they beat the New England Patriots. And then, but at the Buffalo Bills, I have that as a loss, but you know what? They get 3 straight wins. I think they get 3 straight wins. Actually, make that 4 straight. Make that 4 straight wins for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think they win all 4 of them games. And then week 15 week 16, I should say, against the Carolina Panthers, I think they're going to lose that one in week 16. And then in week 17 against the Miami Dolphins, I think they're going to lose that one, but then I think they'll close out the season with a win over the Carolina Panthers. We'll be back for the NFC West. Alrighty. And now for the final division, we have the 8th and final division that I have to predict the games of, and that is the NFC West. Well, for the Cardinals, start off with a win against the New Orleans Saints. And I think they'll get a win over the Carolina Panthers, go 2-0 to start the season. But here's where things get tricky. They got the Niners and the Seahawks, 2 divisional games. They're going to lose to the Niners. But you know what? Give me a win for the Cardinals over the Seattle Seahawks. Be in Phoenix. That should be a win there. Playing host to the Tennessee Titans. Think they'll win that. But then in week 6 against the Indianapolis Colts, think they're going to lose there. They're going to lose to the Green Bay Packers. And you know what? I think they're going to also lose to the Dallas Cowboys in week 9. And I think they'll lose to the Seahawks as well. But you know what? Win over the 49ers and the win at home against the Jacksonville Jaguars. But then against the Los Angeles Rams in week 14, at Tampa Bay in week 14, that's a loss. And they also lose week 14. And I think they also are going to lose week 14 to the Los Angeles Rams. Houston Texans, boy, I really see that as a loss for the Cardinals. Good goodness, the Falcons too? Oh, boy, I don't really see this. But they lose to the Bengals, and then at the Los Angeles Rams, yeah, I think it's a loss there for the Cardinals. So as for the Bucks, I have predicted a 9-8 record. The Cardinals, however, I predict a 6-11 record for them. Alrighty, now we have the Los Angeles Rams. I think they start off pretty good. I think they start off with 2 straight wins. They get wins over the Houston Texans and the Tennessee Titans. But here's where I think they're going to lose week 3 to the Philadelphia Eagles, but they'll beat the Colts in week 4. They'll beat the Niners in week 5, But in week 6 against Baltimore, this is where I see possible stretch meaning to play. I think they lose to the Ravens, and I also think they're going to lose to the Jaguars in week 7. But coming off a bye week, they got the New Orleans Saints, these 3 games here. I think they win all 3. I have a feeling they're going to win all 3 of them. But then against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 12, I think they're going to lose that one. And they also going to lose to the Carolina Panthers in week 13. I think they will also lose to the Carolina Panthers in week 13. Week 14 against the Arizona Cardinals. Give me a win for the Rams there. I think the Rams knock off the Cardinals. And I think they also will knock off the Detroit Lions. But at Seattle, I think that one right there, yeah, I think that one's going to be a loss for the Rams. But they'll beat the Falcons in week 17. And they'll finish off the season with a win against the Arizona Cardinals at home. So I predict for the Rams an 11-6 season for them. Impressive. The San Francisco 49ers had not really much of a season they would have liked last season. How do I think they're going to do this season? Well, tough one to start. They're going to lose I think they lose at Seattle, but we'll gain a win over the New Orleans Saints in week 2. But then week 3, they're going to I think they beat the Cardinals in week 3. I've been going home to play the Jags. I think they get the job done, but then they lose a couple games. I think they lose to the LA Rams in week 5. And I also think they're going to lose at Tampa in week 6. But then against the Falcons, give me a win for the Niners. But I think I have them losing at Houston. In week 8. And then at the New York Giants, I see this potentially being an upset. So I think the Giants might get that one, get them there. And playing host to the Los Angeles Rams, I gotta say, this is something that I could see being an issue. I think the Rams are going to be so good. I think the Rams are going to be good this year. Yeah. And you know what? At Arizona, at Phoenix, nope. I don't see at Phoenix, no way. I don't think that they're going to win in Arizona. But you know what? Give me a win for the Niners over the Carolina Panthers. Then they go to Cleveland in week 13. But you know what? I think they pull it off. I think they get the win. Then they go into their bye week. They play host to the Tennessee Titans. I think that's going to be a win. However, in week 16, they have to go to Indy to play the Colts. I think that's going to be a loss. Week 17 at home against the Chicago Bears. I think they win that one. And you know what? Give me a win in week 18 against the Seattle Seahawks. So I predict a 9-8 record for the San Francisco 49ers. Alrighty, guys. Only one team that I've yet to predict, and that is the Seattle Seahawks. Well, I think they get a win to start off the season against the San Francisco 49ers. But at Pittsburgh, I have a feeling that's going to be a loss. But I think they'll bounce back with a win over the Saints in Week 3. But Week 4 at Arizona, I have them taking a loss there. And then in Week 5 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, give me a win for the Seahawks, but they'll lose to the Jags in Week 6 before getting a win over the Houston Texans in Week 7. Let me just make sure those are right. They are. Okay. Then they go into the bye week in Week 8. When they come off the bye week, I'm going to say a loss to the Washington Commanders before a win. But they'll get a win in Week 10 against the Arizona Cardinals in Week 10. Week 11, oh boy, at the LA Rams, I feel the Rams are taking that. I think the Rams are going to take that one. The Titans, I feel like, could pull it off there. I think the Titans might get a win there in Week 12. But then, against the Vikings, I think the Seahawks get them. I think the Seahawks get them in Week 13. Week 14 against the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta. Give me the Falcons. But then in Week 15, these two games right here. These two games. In the LA Rams. They play host to both of them. They'll be a home team in both games, and I see them winning both of them. But don't get me over here. But do I think they close out with a couple losses? I think it does happen. I think they fall to both Carolina in Week 17 and San Francisco in Week 18. So I predict an 8-9 record for the Seattle Seahawks. So, as the teams make it to the playoffs, well, here's the West. Here's who's made it through the West and on the West. And shockingly, the Colts win. So who wins the division and who makes the playoffs? These are who makes the playoffs. I don't know why it somehow shows Philadelphia number 1 seed, but they only have 11 wins. Yet the Packers have 13 wins. And the Rams also had 11 wins, but the Eagles, I did predict the Eagles would beat the Rams in week 3, so that they would win the head-to-head tiebreaker. They did win the head-to-head of the Pack, but Green Bay had more wins, so that's a bit. I don't know how to read that. Let me see some. Let's see. Pull up the. Yeah, because I have a feeling it does go by who has the most wins. So that's a bit confusing here. So yeah, Bills, but see the division. Who wins who's winning the division? Who wins the division? But Bills, they win I predict being my predictions. Bills win the AFC East the Bills could win the AFC East for the 6th straight year if my predictions hold up. Indianapolis Colts could end their AFC South title throughout this season if my predictions are right. It would be their first South Division title since I think 2014. Ravens would win the AFC North at 12-5. Broncos would take the AFC West. Philadelphia Eagles will break, if my predictions hold up, the Eagles will break a 21-year drought in where the NFC East did not have a repeat winner. Washington would be third in their division this time. Dallas being in second, Giants being last. Again, if my statement predictions hold up. Tampa Bay Buccaneers will win the NFC South for the fifth straight year. Green Bay Packers would win the NFC North for the first time since 2021, if my predictions were to be correct. And the Rams would win their second straight NFC West division title by my predictions. So yeah, this was the results. And now, who made the playoffs as wildcard teams? For the AFC, it was the Cincinnati Bengals, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Los Angeles Chargers. And then for the NFC side, you had the Dallas Cowboys, Detroit Lions, and San Francisco 49ers. And since we can't really do the playoffs in this on my predict playoffs, and I'm honestly not going to because this might not be both right. This won't be. This isn't I can almost guarantee you not all my predictions are going to be correct, but we'll see how it turns out this season. So stay tuned. So hopefully we should find out the NFL regular season kicks off this Thursday. Well, when the Dallas Cowboys will play the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFL kickoff game, which I have Philly winning. But yeah, that's all for this video, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed my predictions. Probably if you leave a comment below, and I'll see you guys later. This is me, Zach Park, signing off.